Katie Rocker of Katie Rocker Leadership Solutions, and I help leaders and their teams amplify their strengths for greater success and fulfillment. Together we cultivate leadership solutions for a life well lived. I'm really passionate about strengths-based leadership development, and what that means is I really think it's important for leaders to understand what their natural talents are and then how to cultivate those talents into strengths, because when we do more of what we do well every day, we create greater satisfaction, greater effectiveness, and greater ease in our work. I also believe that strengths-based leadership development is essential for high-performing leadership teams. Because if we understand our own strengths and the strengths of our team members, we can work together more effectively, we can appreciate what each one of us has to offer, and we can understand our differences as well, and understand that when we work together within our strengths, we're going to create the best outcome that we can, and we're also going to have the greatest satisfaction in working together. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my background and experience and how I got into this work. So I was an educator for 20 years, and I worked in independent schools in the New York City area and also the Boston area. I started my career at Brearley, which is a really wonderful school here in New York City, and I continued at fantastic schools like the Meadowbrook School of Weston and at Kew Forest, where I was head of lower school for 8 years, and St. Hilda's and St. Hugh's in Manhattan, where I was the head of middle school for 3 years. I've always been interested in leadership, and I got my master's degree in school leadership from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And then a number of years later, I got an advanced certificate in school management and leadership from the Harvard Graduate School of Education and the Harvard Business School. And I really love leadership because in schools and also in corporations, it's really about solving problems. I think that's very much reflective of my leadership strategic strength and also my company name, Leadership Solutions. I very much want to help solve problems to make things better for all the constituents, and that was really one of the reasons that I decided to go into leadership myself, because I really thought that I could help the greater good and the environment if I was able to understand what needed to be fixed, what needed to be tweaked, and how I could offer my service in that area. So after 18 years working in schools and working as a school leader, I really decided that I wanted to understand a little bit more about how to help leaders across organizations. So certainly I'm very passionate about my work in schools, but I also feel like a lot of the leadership lessons that I've learned are human lessons that can very much apply to corporations, nonprofits, and other organizations outside of schools. So certainly I continue to work with schools, and I'm very passionate about my work within schools, but I also feel like I have a lot to offer to organizations in the corporate world and into nonprofit world as well. Because ultimately what I care about very much is helping to develop people. And I think my education background really supports that. I'm very interested in people's potential and people's possibility. I have a very optimistic outlook without sort of having blinders on. I think I'm quite realistic, but I really do believe in people's potential. And I believe in helping to support them to be at their best. And I think that my understanding of education and human development, combined with my formal leadership practice and leadership studies, really help me be able to support leaders in all different areas who want to understand more about how they lead best as individuals and how to work better within their teams. So whenever I work with individuals or teams, I think it's really important for us to have a common language and vocabulary. And so that's one of the reasons I got certified as a strengths coach through Gallup, because I really love their Clifton Strengths tool. I've used it a few times in my own leadership work, and I found it was really effective in helping me name what I intuitively knew that I did well, but I couldn't necessarily tell you if you had asked me. And I think that's true for many leaders. Sometimes it's hard to see the label from inside the bottle. We just do what we're doing, and we don't necessarily understand how those are our natural strengths until someone tells us, or until we take this type of assessment that can name these strengths and explain how they show themselves in our work. So for me, my top strengths using the Clifton Strengths tool are strategic, individualization, relator, achiever, and learner. Those are my top 5. And I really use those pretty much every day in my work. I think that being able to think strategically about how we can work together better, how I can work better myself, how to be a stronger leader, is very much reflective of my strategic strength. And my individualization and relator strengths, I think, are really important when I'm working with any of my clients, because I always tailor what I do to meet their individual needs. I try to be really responsive to what I am learning from them and what would be helpful to them. And I also feel like I can relate well, I can connect well, and build trusting relationships with my clients. And my other top 2 strengths are achiever and learner. And those are very much present in all of my work. I'm certainly a high achiever. Sometimes the flip side of that is I can be a little of a hyperachiever. I hold myself to very high standards. But that also means that the work that I do with my clients is consistently very high quality, and that's something that I really value about the work ethic that I have and the product that I want to create with my client and the result that I want them to have. My learner strength is reflective in my constant interest in learning more, in my humility and feeling like I certainly don't know everything, and my desire to increase my knowledge from understanding what my clients have to bring, and also through the research that I use. So for me, I think that knowing my top strengths is really important, because those are things I can naturally do well, that I don't really even have to think too much about using those every day. But I need to be able to hone them, to be able to practice them in order for them to really become my greatest strengths. And I feel like my work that I do in terms of finding leadership solutions and working with individuals and teams in strategic ways very much reflects my strengths. And so I also want to help my clients to find the language that reflects their own strengths and to connect their work more with their strengths so that they can have the greater satisfaction, greater ease in their work, and ultimately greater success in their day-to-day. I also facilitate leadership retreats for senior leadership teams and boards as well, where we use Clifton Strengths as the basis for working together, thinking about how we can expand upon our individual capabilities and work more effectively together. We use this wonderful team grid that is able to map out our individual strengths and also the strengths that we have within 4 leadership domains. And so we can think about how we work together, whether we are more of an executing team, more strategic thinking as a group, whether we prioritize relationship building or we prioritize influencing skills. And so we can see in that team grid the way that we lean towards one or the other of those domains, and we can think about how we can leverage both our strengths within an existing domain as well as thinking about how to increase our strengths in other domains to be most effective as a group.